Hey, I'm Sean, and this is the Pokemon card and ball case I made. It's designed to hold 6 Pokeballs and 6 graded Pokemon cards, displayed like something you'll find in a luxury boutique. From the gold-plated hardware to the stitched leather panels, every detail was made to feel high quality. And it's not just for display, you can also travel with it. I'm thinking maybe for a weekend trip. And the reason why I made it is because in my previous video, I made a single Pokeball holder where I wanted to upgrade from this. Now, I really do like how this actually came out. The only problem is that it felt like it was missing a connection of who is actually in this Pokeball. So I got my notebook and started sketching. My first thought was, how many Pokeballs should I actually hold? Now, I do have a handful of collections, but I don't think I wanted to make a case for all of them. But then I remember what Professor Oak said, that carrying 6 Pokemon is the right amount to provide love and care that they need, and that it also became the official rule in the Pokemon League. Then my next question becomes, how do I show who's inside of the Pokeball? Now, in the game and the manga, they got around this by displaying either a screen or by showing a translucency around the Pokeball. Now, that really wouldn't work for me, so I thought about pairing each Pokeball with a Pokemon card instead. Then I could choose the right artwork that best represented the Pokemon inside of it. That way, anyone who sees the case can instantly make the connection of who's inside of it, as well as showing off your favorite Pokemon card. I also did some light research around how the anime showcased a group of Pokeballs. Now that I got the general idea, I did some quick sketches around the designs. I kept it pretty simple by not trying to over-design it. That way the case could be repurposed to do other things if I wanted. Next, I opened up Adobe Illustrator. I use this to map out the actual dimension, plan out the layouts, and then figure out what materials I actually need. Then I switched to Rhino to create a 3D model. This let me print out the structural base that the leather will wrap around. Now, brands like Hermes or Louis Vuitton will usually use wood like poplar, beech, oak, or mahogany. They're pretty lightweight, flexible. However, I live in a smaller space and I don't actually have a wood shop or any access around me. Luckily, we're in 2025. We have 3D printing that is a lot more accessible and let me get creative with shapes. I'm no longer limited to the rectangular shape, even though I'm making a rectangular shape for this one. Also, I'm using Rhino because that's what I learned in school. And at this point, no amount of SolidWorks, Blender, or Fusion Autodesk tutorial is going to help me learn new software. For printing, I currently have the Bamboo H2D. But before I had this machine, I also was using the Alegu Neptune 4, which still works great by the way. So for this case, I had to model and 3D print 4 different components, which are the top and bottom of the outer case, the inside ball holder, and then the inside card holder. And because of my printing plate being smaller, I had to break each of them into multiple pieces. And then I printed one section of each areas out just to test out a few things. Now for the holder, I needed to figure out, does the ball even fit? Is it sitting too low? Is it sitting too high? What if I added some curves here and there? Does it feel more elegant? Is it too subtle? And then if I use suede or any materials, how would it stretch? Would it actually work or not? For the card holder, I need to figure out how are the cards going to slide in? Where is the entry point? What is the best way to really wrap this weird looking things with a clean edges? After wrapping it in suede, will it actually hold its shape? And will the cards have enough cushioning? And then midway through the process, I learned that the PSA, BGS, CGC slabs, that they all have slight different dimensions. So I had to go back and figure out the sweet spot of what is the right dimension to hold them securely. And then for the outer case, I need to make sure that everything fits once the leather and the suede are all added in. That's because adding leather or suede has enough thickness that can really mess things up. I had to check the tolerance, figure out how tight or loose I want the fit to be. I also needed to plan ahead of making holes and inserts for the hardwares, as the 3D prints aren't full plastic all the way through. I wouldn't have enough support compared to using a traditional wood. Then I had to see the overall ergonomics. Does it feel good when you hold it? Does the weight feel balanced when you open it up, or does it tip over? So in the end, there was a lot of figuring out to do, but I'm pretty happy of how it came out to be. Once I finalized the design, I printed everything out and began the assembly. First, I glued and clamped all the pieces together. Then I had to leave just enough loose material to stretch into the right places, but not so much that it would create clumps, which it definitely did because I was being careless at some point. For the ball slots, I had to cut out the hole and then fold the sways into them, trimming the excess pieces, And then I made a separate band to wrap inside of each hole for a cleaner and more finished look. After that, I felt like the bottom of the case did look a bit plain, so I designed this small puck to be added at the bottom. I reused the old stamp that I used for my previous project and then first tried it on suede, but the gold foil really didn't stick well, and then I tried doing a blind emboss, but that just looked too subtle. Eventually I found some leftover leather that it worked well. It held the foil pretty well, as well as it had a nice contrast to it. So back to the card holder, you may have noticed that I sliced horizontally, and that's because it was really difficult for me to wrap the inside really cleanly if I had to print it in all in one piece. So I had to split it, glue the top and the bottom pieces separately, and then wrap the inside first. Then glued both pieces back together. Then wrap the whole thing in suede. And then lastly, cut the card slots carefully so I could tuck the edges in. Finally, moving to the outer case, I glued the structural parts together, then did a fit check with the hardware as well as popping in the holders together. After that, I took a year-long break. I was close in being done, but I knew the most time-consuming part was coming up, which was the stitching. So back then, I didn't own a sewing machine, and because of that, I had to saddle stitch everything by hand. I did enjoy it if it was a small project or a small wallet I'm doing, but this was a lot of stitching. So I just took a pause, and I knew that later during that year, I would pick up a sewing machine. I finally picked up a Texu 4800 Pro. Still, I didn't start the project until a month ago because I lost momentum. When I picked it back up again, I eased back in by starting the measuring and cutting up all the leather panels for the outer case. I used a pebble leather in the color saddle that complements well with the gold hardware. After that, I used the sewing machine to zip through the straps. That took just a few seconds, way faster than hand stitching. Then I glued the straps into the case and began attaching the hardwares. I used clamps to keep everything in place while I worked, making sure that the case stayed tight and aligned as I installed the rest of the components. Once all the pieces were secured, everything felt pretty solid. That's when the whole thing really started to come together. The last part is just pretty much loading up my team. So if you really enjoyed this build, please give me a like and subscribe. And for more behind the scenes, you can follow me on Instagram.